Hello, everyone, and welcome back. What's on tap for today? Where we're continuing our Politicon debate series. It's part two of Cenk Uygur versus Ben Shapiro. We're going to get to all of that in these Politicon debates. But before we do so, we just want to let you know that you're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your guest host for this evening. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like, share, and follow us. Comment below. Let us know what you think. Let's get to the debate between Cenk and Ben.
Add something to this question, and you can respond to it if you want to, but Cenk referenced Paul Ryan. When the Republicans took control of Congress, Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, famously said, we need to switch from being an opposition party to being a proposition party. So what's your evaluation, Ben, of their efforts in that direction to unite the party and move legislation forward?
I mean, we all have eyes. They suck at it. I mean, and Paul Ryan is not exactly my go-to guy when it comes to political acumen and genius. I more want to respond to some of the contentions that Cenk was making about Medicare for all and single-payer health care. A couple of things. One, when you say we pay for it, that's not technically true. The idea that everybody who's paying into Medicaid paid for it and now they get out what they paid in is obviously not true. It is a redistributive program, and to pretend otherwise is just silly. The people who are paying the payroll taxes are not the people who are taking out through Medicaid, obviously.
Can I just address that super quick? So if we're talking about Medicare, right? Not Medicaid.
Right.
So in Medicare, so you're both correct and incorrect. So it's not like I put in $20 and I get $20 back. That part is true.
Right.
But we all pay into Medicare together, and then we all get it when we are sick.
Can I ask you a question? I have two questions, really serious
Yeah.
questions. One, what is your ideal tax rate? Because it's going to cost a lot of money for a lot of this stuff. And two, what is your ideal level of medical care? Because the fact is that we can spend millions of dollars on people at end-of-life care. We can spend millions of dollars on surgeries and preventative care. I mean, healthcare is an expensive business, even under a single-payer system, which is why generally you end up with rationing. So what is your ideal level of healthcare that is provided to everyone, and what sort of tax rate are you proposing to subsidize that?
Yeah, so those are very, very fair questions. So let's talk about taxes for a second. So conservatives agree or say all the time that the golden era of America was the 1950s and 1960s. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. Our economy was booming at the time, and we became the #1 economy in the world at that time. The tax rate for the highest bracket fluctuated between 70 and 91%. So that is when we were at our best. Now, I want to be clear. I'm also a businessman, and boy, that seems high. It does, okay?
And
one of the reasons my family were Republicans when I was growing up was because before Reagan came in, the highest marginal tax rate was 70%. So now we are nowhere near that. We have reduced taxes to bare bones, and we have shifted the taxes onto the middle class and away from the rich and corporations. So there is a much better balance to be had. And if you said to me, well, you're going to have $800 in taxes that are new, I say, wow, that hurts. But you're going to save $1,000 in premiums, deal. That is a deal I will take every time because I can do math.
Okay.
So that is the beginning of your answer to taxes. And then you said how much care. Well, so that is something that all the countries that do single payer or a version of single payer struggle with, and they have learned a lot of lessons. And if we stop saying, America's #1, we might actually just, first of all, on this issue, we're number 37. And if we looked at what Japan is doing so well, keeping costs down to half of ours and less, we might actually learn something from Japan, Switzerland, and other countries. And by the way, when we say Medicare for all, Medicare Advantage exists. So you can actually add private insurance on top of that, and I find that perfectly great. I have no problems with that at all. So that is the government making sure you don't die and actually lowering rates for you. And then if you want more insurance, no problem.
So all this sounds great, except for...
All right, so here's a fact, just to go there. I mean, Cenk's, put some points out there, but basically he's saying, oh, the golden years of America, when it was a 70 to 91% tax rate, we were at our best. We were flourishing. We were doing it. My question would be is, why don't you jack everything up to 100%? Hey, I'll tell you what if we doubled our tax rate to 200%? Take 200% of our money. Wow. Can you imagine where would we be if we did that? Unbelievable. And then he says all the other countries They do single payer. Japan, look at them. They're at half the rate. Japan, how many people live on the island of Japan? And they're all part of what? What? What race are they a part of? Are they Americans? Are they blacks? Are there Hispanics? Are there Latinos? Are there Middle Easterners? African Americans? Africans? Are there? Are there, Europeans? No, it's a Japanese race. It's unidimensional, it's one-dimensional with their health care. Specifically in terms of their health challenges are limited to what is hereditary and what are the problems that occur within the Japanese race, the Japanese ethnicity, the background, the DNA, all those things have something in terms of where, healthcare costs. And then plus, we're talking about a small island. Yes, congested, but basically, these things that he was talking about, they work in countries that have smaller populations and populations that are not diverse. Let's go to Ben.
For the fact that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security eat up 66% of the federal budget every single year. The idea that all of these socialized medicine countries have it so much better than we do, particularly in terms of cancer care, is a joke. We are still number one in terms of 5-year cancer survival rate here in the United States. And when you talk about top marginal tax rates in the 1950s, there are a couple of things that are worth noting. One, that was top individual marginal tax rates, not necessarily the business tax rate. We now have some of the highest corporate tax rates altogether in the industrialized world. And if you would prefer for us to destroy half of the world before we become the only country that didn't have its industrial capacity destroyed, which is what happened in the 1940s, leading to us being the only productive country on planet Earth, essentially, for the next 2 decades, I'm not with you there. I'm not really in favor of having a giant world war that destroys all industrial capacity across the West, so we're the only people who actually have the capacity to produce anything and just markets that we can provide to.
Right. So, first of all, it is fair to say that, of course, the 1950s and 60s were different. We'd just come out of the war. So, but you have to consider all the different factors. So one was that factor, and the other factor that was the one I mentioned. So when Republicans or conservatives say, well, high taxes by definition will lead to slower growth, well, we know because of our experience in the 1950s and 60s that isn't true. Now, you can say there are other factors, but you can't say that the highest marginal tax rate being 70 or even 90% slows down growth, because it didn't. And it wasn't in Japan and Switzerland, it was right here. And by the way, as a guy who grew up Republican, I was surprised by that too. I was surprised that Finland's system of non-competition in schools worked, but it does. So we have to be open to facts and understand. So, and on the issue of where we're good and not good in healthcare, sure, there are different areas where we excel. But Ben, honestly, you're cherry picking there, one particular area that we're good. Overall, we're number 37. That is not a good result.
Well, you have to break down what that means.
So we're not dying from cancer, we're dying from the other things. It's empirical. We are not as healthy. And finally, this idea that corporations are paying the highest tax rate is both, again, true and untrue. The part that it's true is, hey, there's a rate of 35%. The part that's not true is they don't actually pay that. There is giant loopholes. And they've got $2 trillion sitting offshore, and they won't bring it in. And the reality is that if you look at the taxes from the 1950s, corporations used to pay about a third of our taxes, about 33% of the taxes overall. So they did their fair share, and that is fair. I don't want them paying all of it, but I want them paying a reasonable amount. Now, the share that corporations pay of taxes is down to 10%. You see what they did there? They did wealth redistribution. They took your wealth and redistributed it to them.
Okay.
Ben, I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, one more quick point, and then
Sure.
I'll be done with this, because we can do healthcare for 8 hours here. But 2 things. One, I'd like to know which tax deduction, when people say tax loopholes, a tax loophole is just a tax deduction that's available to everyone, and some people take advantage of it and some people don't. I can't take advantage of certain corporate tax deductions because my business isn't in those businesses, for example. I'm sort of with you in the sense that I'm not in favor of tax deductions. I'm in favor of a lower tax rate and get rid of a lot of the tax deductions because I think that it's ridiculous that we have people gaming the system. That said, I'd like to know which tax deductions you'd like to do away with. And I'd like to know also, when you say that corporations pay 10% of the taxes, right, and individuals pay the other 90%, okay, so that means the taxes are still getting paid to a higher rate than we ever have in our history in terms of the tax revenue to the government. The amount of tax revenue to the government right now is trillions of dollars every year. And final point here, you elided this question by saying we can learn stuff from Japan. The standard of care is the entire question when it comes to single-payer health care. That is the entire thing. If people felt like they were going to get the same access to care in a single-payer healthcare system as they did in a system where they can pay their own way, then we would have no controversy here. But the fact is that rationing is mandated as soon as you start having the government run the healthcare system and decide what level of care people get. So I don't want anyone deciding what level of care that I can get. I don't want anyone else to, they don't care about me. They don't know my child's name. They don't know my name. All they know is how much I cost. I mean, Ezekiel Emanuel is at least honest about this. Ezekiel Emanuel comes out and says, listen, I want to die at 70, right? I want to die at 80. That's fine with me. I'd rather die at that. Well, that's good for him. But if I don't want to die at 80, or I don't want my father to die at 80, it's none of his damn business.
So when you say tax revenue is at its highest point, now you know that that's misleading because everything economically is at its highest point, meaning that we have a lot more people in the country than we did in the 1950s and 60s, so hence we are collecting more overall taxes. But the reality is, as a percentage, it is clearly down. The top bracket now is around 39%. It used to be at 91%. That's inarguable, right?
But our economy is significantly larger than it was then, and part of that is because of reductions in taxes over previous decades.
Well, we...
Score a point for Ben right there. Yes.
We tried supply-side economics. Hey, Kansas, how's that working out for you? So there's this myth that...
It's working out for you. Your business is doing great.
Okay, yeah. Well, we just had 8 years of Obama. So the tax rate is clearly lower for the richest people in the country. It is clearly lower for corporations, in effect. It is, and so to say that it's a record collection is misleading. So in terms of the healthcare and how that relates to the government, oh, by the way, on one more thing on taxes, you said, name me a tax loophole. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are plenty of those. For example, they hide their money offshore. They do tricks like the double Dutch and the Irish sandwich or the reverse. And I would end that. I would say, hey, you know what? If we've got a 35% rate, here's the new rule. You're going to pay 35%, okay? And you're not allowed to hide your money. I don't care if it's in the Cayman Islands. We're going to make that illegal, Mitt Romney. We're going to make it illegal, okay? And so then every once in a while they do a tax holiday. Well, that must be nice. You remember when you got a tax holiday? I don't remember getting a tax holiday. No, that's only for corporations who bribe politicians. So they brought that rate down from 35% to 5%. And they said they were going to create more jobs. Color me surprised when it turns out they didn't. They offshore taxes. They took that 30% extra, put it in their pocket, gave it to their executives, and created no new jobs. Because that's how it works if you just trust corporations to do the right thing. Corporations are not evil. They just want to maximize profit. That is what they're built for. So please don't be naive and be like, no, but the corporations will look out for our interests. No, they look out for their bottom line. Well, I mean, and finally, just last quick thing, sure. Medicare Advantage. You keep saying rationing healthcare, but Medicare gives you the bare minimum, and people seem to be very, very happy about it given how well it polls. But you can do Medicare Advantage and get more. I want you to be able to do that. If you're incredibly rich and you want every kind of treatment, I don't want to deny that to you. Get Medicare Advantage.
So Ben, let me just ask.
Again, Cenk comes out here, bash corporation, in a way, okay, listen, I am for the fact that, but the thing is right now, that's the system that we have. There are loopholes within the system. Corporations, their lawyers, entities, the rich, whatever you want to call it. Everybody wants to get up to that thing, up to that level, and hopefully attain that level of income, of status, of living, a standard of living. Everybody wants to increase that thing. So again, by attacking corporations and saying those evil, greedy corporations, all they want to do is increase their bottom line and make a profit. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. And guess what? They have people that are working for them. They got the CEO, the employers, they got the managers, the vice president, the presidents, and whatever. And think of whatever you want of those people. They need to get paid. They need to make an income, and they have value, and that value has been established within the business community. You're not going to pay the same amount of money to a janitor or to an entry-level intern as you are to somebody who's been there for quite some time. A VP, a president, the CEO, the CEO. And different businesses have, and one business entity has a CEO is making a heck of a lot less money than a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. And then to talk about Medicare Advantage, okay, that's fine if you want to pay more into it and get Medicare Advantage, but still single payer is going to be ration care. I don't care what you say about it. Remember those death panels that they were talking about? And they do have in England, where they basically take a look and see what your lifespan is and whether or not it's worth it to spend the amount of money for the health challenge that you have, and that at a certain point in time in life, it's not worth it to spend that money. I don't know what you want to call it, but to me, that's a end of life panel. That's what I would say. Anyways, let's see what Ben's got to do in response.
The problem is when you pay a higher tax rate throughout the course of your life to pay for all of the Medicare that you are talking about, you don't have enough money to pay for Medicare Advantage in many cases. And as far as this idea that corporations they don't have any of your interests at heart, you're a corporation. TYT's it's a corporation. You have 80 employees. I assume that you're not just a greedy asshole, and that you actually would like to help your employees from time to time. And you just talked about how under Obama, everything got better with your business. Well, under Obama, he didn't radically escalate taxes. Okay, there was not a radical escalation of taxes under President Obama. And finally, when you seem to be identifying a higher tax rate in the 1950s with higher level of growth. So if that's the case, why not just tax everybody at 100% and we can have massive growth from here to eternity?
There you go. Do it 200%.
Because, let me just ask, since we're talking about taxes, do you think we'll see tax reform in the next few?
Anyways, Ben just got him right back there. Remember, I just said a few minutes ago, if it's so great, if you think the great thing was at 91 and 70%, then you know what? Let's just jump it up to 100%, and we'll do absolutely phenomenal. One thing you have to understand is that in the 40s and the 50s, we were the dominant engine, the economic engine in the world. Half of Europe was completely under rubble. I mean, you're trying to, recover from the devastation of World War II. We were the suppliers. We were lending out to those countries. We were, doing whatever we could. We were manufacturing was unbelievable at that time. A tremendous amount of prosperity was going on. And that effective tax rate that they were talking about, are you telling me that individuals were actually paying 91% of their income to the government at that time? You don't think there were loopholes back then? Of course there were. But it's a nice way to basically talking about it and saying, 91%, 70% tax rate. And this one here, in this segment, part 2, I would probably say that it was probably, I'd give a little bit of it to probably Ben, just on the fact and basically rebutting some of the numbers and in terms of the tax numbers and whatever. And also the fact that if you're going back and basing your whole premise on the fact that 70 to 91% is great, then 100% ought to be even better. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your guest host. My name is Dr. Nasir. Want you to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, like, share, and follow us. Leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.